That's true. Shall we move on? Should we talk about a different video game?
I guess so.
What?
Marty, you went to an Oculus event last week.
I did, yeah.
And you and I played some Oculus games. Mm-hmm. Chloe, have you tinkered with this thing much yet, the Rift?
I've used it a couple times.
Okay.
Not recently, though.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, are you like a fan
Actually,
of VR?
no. I did use it recently.
Okay.
during GDC, yeah.
Nice.
I played some kind of tank.
All right, so you're a big liar, is what you're saying.
Why are you lying so much?
What? I've played a lot of VR. It's good.
Yeah, but it's just really interesting, right? Like, we've been talking about Vive so much on this show that to go take such a sharp left turn and be like, all right, let's just play Oculus all week. It was so different. Like, it was so weird to play a bunch of Oculus games at the same time as we were playing a bunch of Vive games, because it made me realize, like, oh, VR is not a unified thing. Like, these are very different platforms. Obviously, I knew that, but it takes playing a bunch of games in a row to kind of realize, like, the strengths and weaknesses that each have over each other.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Sort of, I spent a bunch of time with all three, PSVR included, last week, and I'm sort of, like you said, noticing the strengths, the weaknesses, and then the eventual strengths of some. And speaking to Oculus directly, the one thing right out the gate it's missing from Vive is the sort of touch motion stuff, which Oculus Touch isn't being released until later on in 2016.
It's pretty late too, right? Like, it's September, I want to say.
I don't know if it has an exact date, but I think it's
Are
just
those the controllers?
Yeah,
Yes,
so
the
those
weird
are
thumb things that like wrap around your back.
Yeah, and those are the
so
things
weird.
that give you sort of the motion and mobility that the Vive has.
Yeah.
But that's not come when Oculus launches on the 28th. That's not really there, so you're not going to get those amazing experiences.
That's
Like
so weird.
Job Simulator and that kind of stuff off the gate. But some of the launch games that we did get to play are pretty cool. I got to play Chronos, which is probably something you'd be interested in. Which
I really want to play
Is that
Chronos.
the dungeon
Time
crawly
Dark Souls.
time thing?
Dungeon
Yeah.
crawly, it definitely it controls very much like a light Souls game,
Yeah.
like a simplified Souls game.
I'm curious, what is it like playing a third-person game in VR?
I was really skeptical on that. I was really like, what? Well, like first person just seems to make so much sense.
Totally.
But after playing Chronos and then Edge of Nowhere, which is Insomniac's game, which is sort of Dead Space 3-ish. It's like a horror game set in the Arctic. Yeah,
Canada.
It
That's
totally
like
works.
cryostasis or
Yeah,
something?
yeah, 100%. But it totally works. A third-person game where the VR-ness of it is sort of you being the camera totally works for me. It works in Chronos because everything is from these static camera angles that are sort of like the original Resident Evil, where you enter a room and the camera is just positioned at one part, and your neck sort of it would almost be like if literally a movie camera was positioned
like
somewhere
you
in a
described
room.
it, and I thought of a security camera.
Yeah, totally. And then your neck is the rest of the camera, and you can look down, you can look up, but you can't like move.
Is that jarring when it goes from one to the other?
Totally
it
not
seems like it
jarring.
would be massively disorienting.
It surprisingly wasn't. And there are some times where it's really effective, like depth of field, where I was in a cave and there was a bunch of stalagmites, the ones that come out of the ground, between me and the character, and it definitely had this awesome sense of depth and really felt like you're watching a really great 3D movie. There's other parts where the camera's sort of looking down like a really deep well, and you had that sense of, oh God, I'm gonna fall there even though I know I'm not. And so that was really cool. And same thing with Edge of Nowhere, where I'm climbing along these walls in an Arctic cave, and I look down, I'm like, oh God, that's really far down. So third person totally works, and it makes me like, I don't know, like I could see down the road them adding a VR thing into like a Souls game, or like, not that everything needs VR.
Well,
but
that's kind of what I was going to ask. Is like, you say it works, but does this game benefit from it? Does it need to be a VR game? Would you rather just not play it in VR, not have to buy the headset?
I mean, that's the weird thing now is like, I play these games and I sort of think like, would the mechanics and systems be able to hold up in a thing like Chronos if you strip away the VR and you're just playing? Like, would I want to play a game if someone was like, hey, there's a game that's like Dark Souls but simplified and the camera is like Resident Evil 1? Wouldn't you just be like,
no thanks?
I don't want to play that.
But the fact that it's in VR, it's like, and it's a VR game, it's like, well, okay.
Yeah.
It seems like a weird gimmick.
Yeah, do you think that's just the grab?
It's almost like I don't know. It's almost like a weird thing where it's like, oh, well, it's in VR and I need something to play in VR, so I guess I'll play that.
Yeah, it's interesting. It doesn't have the same like, whereas something like the Portal and Dota demos that we've talked about at length on here, like those would just simply not be as effective if not in VR.
Totally.
Like
because you are present in that space.
And the
100%.
power comes from the sense of space and the sense of size and sort of the actual futzing around with the environment. And so, I don't know. That's going to be something, leading up to the 28th when there's certain games that are going to be on both, like Adrift.
Yes.
We're going to review Adrift normally and Adrift in VR and see sort of what the difference between those are. And
Yeah, that's going to be fascinating to see how a lot of game sites cover this stuff.
Yeah.
Especially like, so there are like 30 launch games is the number that Oculus is throwing around, and there's stuff like Adrift, Eve, Valkyrie, Eve Gunjack, Air Mech, Defense Grid 2, Chronos, which we talked about, Project Cars, Adventure Time, Lucky's Tale, Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, a bunch more.
Ethan Carter.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's a bunch of stuff, and some of them are re-releases. It's funny. It's like, okay, these are 30 games, and each of them are between $10 and $60. Now that $600 VR price tag is like going way high up. I wonder too, is like, if I own Ethan Carter, do I get it free for VR? Like, how does that work?
I don't know. That's actually a really good question. Yeah, like I don't know. I have Ethan Carter on my Steam account, and because I reviewed it, like, am I going to be able to hook up an Oculus and it's just mine?
Yeah, or do I need to buy it on the Oculus store?
That's probably the one I want to play Ethan Carter the most right now, because that's the one I'm most familiar with.
It's also
I played through it twice.
So beautiful that I want to see that from that perspective.
Totally, yeah. And so I want to play that and be like, is this any better because of VR? Does this add anything to a game I already really like?
Yeah. So to your point about the conversation we had about Chronos and whether or not it's a viable game on its own or if it's just a cool novelty VR thing, 30 launch games on day one for Oculus is pretty good. And there's obviously going to be some stuff that doesn't land and isn't necessarily as impressive or a killer app kind of thing, but that's a lot of games. There's a lot of really cool stuff. There's a lot of really great stuff coming. You mentioned Edge of Nowhere, which is awesome. We played Werewolves Within from Ubisoft, which is great.
Which is a ton of fun. Eagle Flight, also from Ubisoft, is a ton of fun. Like we have a little bit of we sort of have a glimpse of what the rest of the year is like. Some of the games at the Oculus event I went to last week were there, but we still don't we have a very firm grasp on what is coming out on March 28th. And it's a huge, really varied lineup. 30 games is probably bigger than most lineups. I think that's probably bigger than the PS4 and Xbox One launches were. That said, none of the games as of right now particularly stand out to me as, I don't know, maybe we're just not at a time where a launch killer app exists anymore. Like, this isn't Mario 6. I think days of Mario 64 and Halo might be behind us, honestly. Like,
totally.
There was no
big thing that sells the thing.
Yeah, like
now it might be quantity is enough.
Totally. Like when Xbox One and PS4 launched, like the big games were like Knack and Rise. Like,
I think that's just because VR is so new.
Yeah.
Like I'm really curious. Like going back sort of to the third person thing, but also tying into this, like, I'm really curious to see what kinds of games people make later down the line when VR is more established, when people are more like aware of the unique constraints and strengths of VR, and then designing experiences specifically for that. I feel like using a third person camera is kind of a weird approach, honestly, for VR. I don't know if it's like completely taking advantage fully of what it's capable of.
Yeah, that's a good
unless, at least the way it's implemented here, maybe somebody can find some kind of interesting use for it. But I don't know. I mean, I would have to play these games for myself, of course, but this is just, it'll be cool to see what happens.
Yeah, it seems like third person is a much tougher sell than first person, because VR and first person just is the thing that pops up in everyone's mind. Like, I put this helmet on and I'm looking through someone's eyes.
I feel like for me, like Adrift is kind of what's those are the sorts of experience that are selling VR for me,
Yeah.
TBD if it works or if it's great, but like that idea is so seductive to me in VR.
Of like stuff like Firewatch and Tacoma and first person games that aren't necessarily like, I don't know if a Call of Duty would work in first person. Like, I don't know if a Battlefield would work in first person. Or not first person, but in VR.
Well, like, I think a war game would be really traumatic.
Yeah.
Well, also a game where you're dying a lot is really frustrating in that. Like, you don't want that experience of, I don't know. I don't want want failure in VR. Like, I don't want that feeling.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I never thought about that before this moment.
I think it could be designed well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would take... I definitely don't think it can't be done. Jesus Christ, what was that sentence? I definitely think it's possible, but I don't think.
Much better.
I don't think just being like Modern Warfare 4.
Are you shutting down?
I was talking for 2 hours. I didn't get a drink of water. My mouth's all dry.
Want this guy? You want this?
I don't think you could just say like, hey, the next Call of Duty game is VR, and we don't have to change any design mentalities.
Just the conventional FPS format or whatever it might not. But yeah, like it'll be cool to see how people adapt existing formats to VR.
Yeah, totally. Like I played Bulletstorm at DICE, which is an Epic VR.
You played Bullet Train.
Bulletstorm is
totally
by
epic
the guys who did.
It's also epic, but
and it was the guys who did Vanishing of Ethan Carter.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And Gears Judgment.
Where am I? And so I played Bullet
Train.
Train, which is a first-person shooter, but the way it handles movement, it's not a first-person shooter where you're just using an analog stick to move around or using WASD. You sort of just have specific nodes in the level, and it acts like almost like a arcade light gun game. And that's how you control movement. Sort of, is it the same way with budget cuts?
Well, budget cuts is more freeform because you can bounce to anywhere, but it's the same idea where you're like, I want to point there and I'm there. I want to point over there and I'm there.
So I think like those are smart ways to be like, hey, this is how we adapt a genre that everyone understands into VR.
It's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot interesting. It's going to be really interesting just to see how developers evolve that and improve that over time too. Like it's a really great first step. I don't know if that's the solution, but it's super cool right now. And navigation and traversal and stuff is going to be cool to see like how that changes over the next year, 2 years, 5 years.
It's nuts that this thing's going to be out in the market within a week, and we're just there. We just did it. VR's here.
Yeah. Good job, everyone. Welcome to the future.
Yay.
Well,